Hello, welcome to my recap of the game between Grigoriy Oparin and Hikaru Nakamura from Grand Prix in Berlin. And this was a very crazy game, I would say. After losing the first round, Hikaru thought he had to play for a win, to play more ambitiously, and we had the King's Indian, which is considered to be a go-to opening when black has to win. And we have this move order, this variation, and after castling, Oparin goes for h4. Trying to go h5, h6, and to gain some space on the king side. And what black usually does here is he plays c5, trying to strike in the center, but now, as expected, white tries to block the center and to get more space on the king side. And here you have two different approaches. The first one is Benoni-like, which was played in the game by Hikaru, with e6 and then capturing on d5. And the second one here is going for b5, going for the Benko approach. This was played recently, I mean not recently, but last year in Sinkfield Cup, I think, or St. Louis Rapid and Blitz. I don't know which tournament was it, but between MVL and Svidler. And after capturing, there was a6, a4, and the game continued, but black had a very good position after bishop b5, bishop a6, and so on and so on. Eventually he lost the game, but the position was decent for black. But in the game which was played today, e6 was played, and now Oparin continues with the kingside expansion by h5. Now Hikaru takes on d5, ed5. And now we have a symmetrical Benoni position. Maybe he was afraid of cd and some b5 and forcing lines like bishop b5 knight e4. I'm not sure if it works, but in the regular Benoni there is such line without h4, h5, and I hope it works here. So he chose to go with symmetrical recapture. Now rook e8 by Hikaru, and now h6. He doesn't open up the h file because with hg, he would just... he doesn't have realistic chances to make any attack. And the king is still in the center, so it's not so recommendable for white to do that. He would have to spend tempi on bishop e3, queen d2, but I believe even in case of bishop e3 that queen a5 is quite attractive in that position. Also, maybe rook e3 at some moment would be quite interesting. Maybe not immediately, but at some point for sure. But let's go back once more. Here Oparin plays h6, bishop h8 by Nakamura, and now bishop g5. Black is slightly lacking space. Slightly. The pawn went to h6, and practically black always has these back rank issues with the white pawn being on h6. And that's going to be a big problem later on, as you will see. Now Nakamura tries to make some counterplay by queen b6, and now Oparin just plays very coolly b3. And the issue in black's position can become this knight on f6, which can be targeted by a bishop and the queen maybe potentially, or after some rook lift, rook h4, rook f4, and then the f7 pawn might become a vulnerable target. So here Hikaru chose to exchange knights by knight e4, although I think even knight bd7 was quite okay, and to go for knight e5 maybe next. But he chose this move, knight e4. Now we had exchange, and now king f1. Very interesting move. Trying to step aside and to free the bishop from e2, to get to d3 and to kick this quite unpleasant rook on e4. Quite active, not unpleasant, but quite pleasant, quite active. So here I think Hikaru chose a wrong plan. I think it took with knight a6 he took a step in the wrong direction. I think the right approach was to go knight d7 and to take over the f6 square, which could be potentially decisive, because if you imagine bishop d3, queen f3, bishop f6, exchanging bishops would be lethal for black. So in that sense, knight d7 would be more useful, but Hikaru chose to go knight a6, and after bishop d3, now black should have gone with rook e8 and continued with the normal play, but even after that, white can play a3 to limit the knight, and now the knight has to go back, but not to c7, because from there it doesn't have plenty of choices, but just to admit the mistake and to go to b8. And then to try to get back to d7 and somehow to regroup. But already now it looks very, very unpleasant for black. And here I just want to mention, before I go to the game, here bishop takes a1 is very dangerous for black, because after queen takes there is a checkmate threat, queen g7. And black has to play something like f6, because if rook e5 there is always a move like f4. Or just knight f3. I think even knight f3 works in that case. But I think even if you take on b3, you can just go bishop e2 back and then capture on e5. So after queen a1, f6 is the only move, but you can take it on f6, and after queen c7, now you defend against queen g7 checkmate, but there is bishop takes g6, a crushing move. And now if you capture on g6, of course that doesn't work because of queen g6, and after king h8 there's bishop f6, and if king f8 then the h pawn is quite useful there, just forcing the queen off, and that's okay, bishop g6 here, on which black can play rook f8, but I think now the cleanest solution here is to go queen g7 and just exchange the queens. After this, and now the rook doesn't have a good square, so king has to capture, and after bishop h6, taking bishop f8, also d6 pawn drops afterwards, and the knight is very bad on a6, so it's pretty much winning at this point. So let's go back to the game. Instead of rook e8, Nakamura played bishop g4 first. And now after f3, his point was to go rook d4 and to pin the bishop. In case of fg, to have knight d4 and then to grab the bishop and to make white's position much more dangerous. But with rook d4, the issue with this move is that his rook is now stranded. He doesn't have a way back to e8, and the back rank is potentially weakened by that move. And now Oparin just plays very coolly, plays queen e2, and the bishop goes back to d7. If he played knight b4, that could transpose to the game after rook e1, and I don't want to spoil anything just yet. So let's go back to the move, because after rook e1, threat is queen e8, and bishop d7 has to be played, so it appears to be the same in the game. So after queen e2, bishop d7 was played immediately, and now rook e1, stopping rook e8, which would include the rook into the play and make black's life much easier, and white's life would be much sadder. And now, a very important moment in the game. Now Hikaru plays a move, knight b4, which is a huge mistake. And I think that it was possible to somehow try to hold the game by playing bishop e5 to block the e-file and to prepare maybe some f6 next. But the issue with this move is that after bishop e3, black is just losing the exchange. The rook is trapped on d4, and black can play something like queen a5, but that's not doing that much. After knight h3, you can take on d3, or let's say if you take on d4, maybe you can hope for something like cd4, knight c5, and some kind of compensation for the exchange. But white can just wait for this capture on d4 and just first develop his pieces by knight h3, and when black takes on d3 or whatever he does, now knight g5 is a very strong threat, trying to target these pawns and then go for f4 maybe. So let's say if black takes on d3, what happens? Well, you take after bishop f5. There are some chances maybe after knight b4, going for bishop d3 next. But even that, I think white has quite good winning chances after queen d2, and if black takes, there is still some small hope for salvation of this position, because the b3 pawn might be a weak one, and there is maybe some chance. But let's go back over here. Let's just discuss here this position after bishop d4, cd4. How good is that? Well, here very annoying move is probably just bishop g3 next, hitting the rook and somehow taking over the e-file. Let's say if I play some random move like knight h3, bishop g3, and now I have to go back to f2. I still have the e-file as white, but was it worth it? Well, it's questionable, because now I have knight c5, and the d pawn, even though it's a weak pawn, it looks like a weak pawn, it might be a very dangerous one. But let's go back to the game. This is all very complex. And also just to mention that after rook d1, just to mention the point of the whole bishop g3. After rook e8, the queen has to go, and black has very good position. But let's go back to the game. Like I said, knight b4 is played in the game. And now if bishop goes to b1, there is this tactic, very nice tactic, knight d5. Using the fact that white cannot capture because of bishop b5 and losing the queen. So white has to find something else. Going to e4 doesn't solve the issues as well, because you can also go with f5 next, or just rook e8. Why not? So in this position, white has a really nice tactical shot, and he plays bishop g6. Bishop g6. And let's see first what happens if hg is played. Well, in that case, white can play h7 check. And now if king f8, there is this check on h6 and promotion to either a rook or a queen. And a checkmate. So after h7, king g7 has to be played, but now there is a nice, very nice move, queen e7. Threatening bishop f6 checkmate, and also some bishop h6 ideas as well. So hg doesn't really work. It's not a big challenge for white. So what else? If fg, there was an issue with queen e7. And actually there was a very nice line in this particular variation. And now rook e6 is a big threat. Because let's say if you play some random move like... also queen d7 is a big threat, but... let's say not a5, but let's say queen c7. There is rook e6 on the next move, and now the bishop cannot capture, of course, but what's more important is that rook g6 is coming next. And let's say rook c8, you go rook g6 and give a checkmate on h7. And queen d8 doesn't work because you take twice and end up with the exchange up. So the only way to fight here is to capture on d5 with the rook. And now the issue with this is that you cannot capture with c-pawn because queen b5 should be played, and if king goes to f2, there's rook e8. And now the queen is all of a sudden in some trouble, because if you take on d6, there's knight d3, and you take the rook afterwards. So that's not very good, but after the check, white still has some chances to survive, queen e2, but after this... Sorry, not here. After knight d3, and rook d1, then there is rook d3, rook e8, rook e8, and after queen d3 takes, there's bishop b5. And black is in control now, pretty much. Sorry about this confusion, but it happens. So after rook d5, the crushing move is rook e6. And now again the same threat, rook g6 is coming. Let's say if you go queen c7, I take and h7 checkmate. So what to do as black? If you give a check, now it matters where you go. If you go to f2, it's lost, because after knight d3, king goes to g3, because if you step on the e-file, there is rook e1 and capture the rook. So king g3 leads to knight e5, and black is winning in this position because the rook is going to be lost, and also, what's even more important, g6 is going to be captured by knight in the case of eventual capture on g6. And also the bishop is defended as well. So it matters where the king goes, and it has to go to e2 in that case. And now you don't have any good move. If you go bishop e8 to just defend from rook g6, Now there is this move, very nice move, rook f6. And now there are two threats, queen f8, rook f8, or queen e6 as well. So black has to capture. He's forced to do it, and now there is a very nice touch in this position. You don't capture on f6 immediately because there is queen c7 and black defends somehow. But you go queen e6 first to force the bishop to go to f7. And then you take on f6. And it's simply lost. Black cannot stop queen g7. He can just give a couple of checks, but because of the hanging rook on d1, it's impossible to save this after king d1. Black can manage to save from the checkmate, but it's not... it's a piece down. So that's bad. What else? After rook e6, well, there's nothing left. If you take on e6, then queen takes, king f8, now bishop e7, a very nice pattern with the queen and bishop. Just the bishop has to go in front of the queen, and after king e8, bishop f6 now. King f8, but now there is no queen e7, queen g7 because the bishop is there. But there's a very nice finishing touch, bishop g7, forcing bishop takes, hg, king g7, and now queen e7, hitting the pawn on h7 second time, and after this, now there's no queen h7, just take on h7 with the rook, threatening both checkmates on f7 and g7. And that's why fg doesn't work, because of queen e7 and the rook e6 coming next. Also, I forgot to mention this one. If rook takes d5, rook e6, what happens if black just takes on g5? This one is even more beautiful than the previous one. Now white has rook f6 as a move, threatening queen f7, and there's no way to defend against this checkmate. If you try bishop e8, now f8 is uncovered, and it's checkmate. If you take, queen takes, and amazingly black doesn't have a way to defend against queen g7 checkmate. So that's a really beautiful one. And Hikaru in this position, after bishop g6, doesn't capture on g6, he captures on d5. Again, if cd, there is bishop b5 and white is losing the queen. So white has to find other way to proceed, and he takes on h7, which is a mistake actually, and I will show you the winning move after I show the game as a cliffhanger maybe. And here Hikaru took on h7, this was the point, queen c2, but now f5, the f-pawn defends this very poor king. Now cd by Oparin, and now bishop e5, trying to somehow patch the e file with the bishop. And now again, this is still much better for white, but it becomes more and more unclear. And after this move, which was played by Oparin, things become very double-edged. And he played knight e2, which allowed the queen exchange, more or less. Here knight h3 was better, and I will show you the difference between two moves a bit later. And the idea is just to go next f4 and to kick this bishop away and to somehow penetrate with the rook to the 7th rank. But let's go to the game and let's see what happened. 92, very logical move, trying to kick the rook away, but there is this unpleasant pin on a6. Now to untangle, he goes to f2, but now there is queen d3, a very nice move. And there are small tactics here. The rook is untouchable because after this, bishop takes d4 and white is losing the queen. So pretty much it's forced to exchange queens here. I don't know what else could you do here. If you go to c1, well, that seems quite awkward because you can just ignore the threat and go rook g8 maybe. Even that. And in case of... well, maybe not that, but because rook d1 might happen, but... for example, some bishop b5 might come very, very unpleasant. Here, bishop b5, and if you take it, I take on d4, and can you go to g3? It's a bit awkward. I think there is rook g8, and it becomes a bit dangerous for white. I may be wrong, but it feels like things are getting out of control. So after queen c1, or maybe just f4. f4 here looks also interesting. I don't know. Probably bishop b5, and after this to take it, and after king g3 to just go rook g8. But never mind. I can check it out with the engine if you want. Let's check it out real quickly. Oh, actually this is winning +8. Okay, my bad. Well, actually queen c1 was the best move by the engine. Oh, ouch. Queen c1 and then hit the bishop, hit the rook. Bishop b5 was played. Should be played, but what happens on this? Aha, queen takes. Oh, this is crazy. Bishop e3, f4. Oh. Oh, goodness. And if bishop takes, and white has to give up a rook and a queen. Well, that's nice. Nice to know that. But wait, queen e3, just f4, and... oh, again, it's a mess. After this, take, oh, rook e7, king h8. Okay, this is way too much for my knowledge. So Oparin chose a safer choice, queen d3, rook takes, and now rook d1. And now black takes on d1, takes, and now black has a very good counterplay on the queen side. He tries to open up the a file and to penetrate with his rook on the 2nd rank. Now Oparin goes rook d3, there's a4, and very quickly we get to the end of this game. Rook a2 was played by Nakamura, and after king g1 we have a repetition, because now black's threat is to go bishop d4, and I guess there's no good way to avoid this repetition. The bishop covers all the squares, and the king cannot escape. Let's say if you go for something like king e1, just give a check, give more checks, and black cannot escape this cage he's in, and it's just over. It's a draw. And that's how they made a draw. In this position, Oparin was completely winning, and let's show the clearly winning move. So it was here after bishop g6, knight d5, and now using the deflection and back rank issues, white could have played bishop f5 here. And this could just win on the spot. Because now the bishop hangs, the knight hangs on d5, and there's really no good way to deal with this threat. What to do here? If, let's say, bishop c6, now there is bishop h7, because in this case, bishop is on c6 and doesn't defend f5, and black doesn't have this option of f5. And if king takes, queen c2. And if the king goes back, h7, and the king is very soon done. So after this, bishop f5, the bishop hangs or the knight drops on d5. And if you go here, just take and take on d5, and white ends up with a piece up. And that could be a very, very convincing win for Oparin, but he chose to capture on h7 here. And after king takes, queen c2, f5, cd, bishop e5, now an interesting option for white could have been knight h3. And the difference is now, if you give a check on a6, just to prove a point, to make a difference between two moves. If this, then king g1, and now queen d3 is impossible because of rook e5, a very strong move. And if queen takes queen, then give a check, and very soon it's gonna be checkmate. If king h8, bishop f6, and this checkmate in a couple of moves. So after this, rook e5, if d5, then there is queen takes c5, entering on e7 and making some chaos in the position. Not chaos, it's very clear what is going to happen, but it's a massacre for black. So I think I covered all